For 22 years, he walked through the doors of the FBI every single morning. He wore his badge. He shook hands with colleagues. He attended church every Sunday with his family. He coached youth programs. He was, by every appearance, the perfect American patriot, a man devoted to his country, his faith, and his duty. But behind that face was the most damaging spy in the history of the United States. His name was Robert Philip Hanssen, and the secrets he sold to the Soviet Union and later Russia didn't just compromise intelligence operations, they got people killed. This is not a story about a villain from a movie. This is real. This happened inside the walls of America's most trusted law enforcement agency. And the most chilling part, nobody suspected him for over 2 decades. February 18, 2001, a quiet Sunday afternoon in Foxstone Park, Vienna, Virginia. Robert Hanssen, a senior FBI supervisory agent, walked into the park carrying a package. He placed it beneath a wooden footbridge, a dead drop in spy terminology, a secret handoff point used to exchange information without ever meeting face to face. What he didn't know was that the FBI was watching him, every step, every move, every breath. As soon as he placed that package and walked away, agents swarmed in. Hanssen was surrounded, handcuffed, and arrested right there in that park, just miles from his own home, in a suburb where neighbors mowed their lawns on weekends and children played in the streets. When agents searched that package, they found classified documents, highly classified, the kind of information that in the wrong hands could unravel the entire intelligence infrastructure of the United States. He looked at the agents surrounding him and said just 5 words. What took you so long? 5 words that told you everything. He had always known this day might come. He had lived with that knowledge every single day for 22 years, and somehow, some way, he had never been caught until now. Robert Hanssen was born in Chicago in 1944. By most accounts, his childhood was difficult. His father, Howard Hanssen, was a Chicago police officer known for being harsh and emotionally abusive. He constantly belittled young Robert, telling him he would never amount to anything. That wound never healed. Hanssen studied chemistry and later earned an MBA from Northwestern University. He joined the Chicago Police Department briefly. Then, in 1976, he joined the FBI. From the outside, it was a dream career. He was intelligent, technically gifted. He had deep expertise in counterintelligence, which means his actual job was to catch spies. The painful irony of this story is that Robert Hanssen knew exactly how spies operated, because he was one. His first act of betrayal came shockingly early. In 1979, just 3 years after joining the FBI, he approached the Soviet Military Intelligence Agency, the GRU, and offered to sell secrets. Not because he was blackmailed, not because he was threatened. He did it voluntarily. He did it for money, and he did it with a terrifying level of calculation. His wife, Bonnie, actually discovered what he was doing that first time. She found documents. She confronted him. Hanssen told her he hadn't passed any real information yet, which was a lie, and convinced her to go to confession with him at their Catholic church rather than report him. She believed him. And he continued. Hanssen wasn't selling small pieces of information. He wasn't leaking minor operational details. He was handing over the crown jewels of American national security. He revealed the identities of Soviet officers who were secretly working as double agents for the United States. These were men who had risked everything, their lives, their families, to help America during the Cold War. Hanssen handed their names directly to Moscow. At least 3 of them were executed. 3 human beings died because Robert Hanssen needed money and felt unappreciated at work. He revealed the existence of a secret tunnel that the U.S. had spent enormous resources digging beneath the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. The purpose of the tunnel was to intercept Soviet communications. By the time American intelligence realized the tunnel had been compromised, years of investment and planning had been completely wasted. He gave Russia information about America's nuclear war contingency plans. Specifically, he revealed details about how the U.S. government would continue to function after a nuclear attack. including the locations of secret bunkers used by senior officials. He essentially handed Moscow a roadmap to America's survival strategy. He exposed American eavesdropping technologies and methods, giving Russia the ability to understand exactly how the U.S. collected intelligence and how to avoid it. In total, Hanssen passed more than 6,000 pages of classified documents and over 24 computer disks to Soviet and Russian intelligence over his 22-year career. The FBI later described the damage he caused as possibly the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history. Part of the answer to how he got away with it is disturbing in its simplicity. The FBI trusted its own people too much. Unlike CIA officers, FBI agents were rarely subjected to polygraph tests during Hanssen's era. There was an institutional culture of assuming that anyone who made it into the Bureau was already vetted for life. Hanssen exploited that trust completely. He was also extraordinarily careful. He never met his Soviet handlers in person. He communicated through dead drops, leaving packages at prearranged locations. He refused to reveal his true identity to his Russian contacts for years. He actually lectured his Russian handlers on how to improve their own operational security. He was teaching the enemy how to be better spies while working inside the FBI. He also studied previous spy cases obsessively, specifically to understand how they got caught, and then made sure he didn't make the same mistakes. But here's the haunting detail that investigators later uncovered. Colleagues had raised concerns about Hanssen over the years. At one point, a fellow agent noticed that Hanssen had access to computer file he had no reason to access. The concern was reported. It was not followed up on. America's most damaging spy was nearly caught and then wasn't because of bureaucratic failure. By the late 1990s, the FBI and CIA had become convinced that there was a mole somewhere deep inside American intelligence. Too many operations had been blown. Too many sources had disappeared. For years, they suspected a CIA officer named Brian Kelly. They put him under intense surveillance. His life was turned upside down. He was innocent. The real break came in 2000 when American intelligence obtained a file from a former Russian intelligence officer, reportedly at a cost of more than $7 million. That file contained a fingerprint and a voice recording. The fingerprint matched Robert Hanssen. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The FBI had to move carefully. They needed to catch him in the act. They arranged a new assignment for Hanssen, placing him in a position where he would have a reason to access files and then, inevitably, attempt one more dead drop. He took the bait. And on that Sunday afternoon in Foxstone Park, 22 years of betrayal came to an end in a matter of seconds. At his trial, Robert Hanssen pleaded guilty to 15 counts of espionage and conspiracy. He avoided the death penalty in exchange for his cooperation with investigators, agreeing to tell the government everything he had done. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He served his sentence at ADX Florence in Colorado, the federal supermax prison, often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, in near total isolation. His wife Bonnie lost her federal pension. Their 6 children had to rebuild their lives with the weight of their father's betrayal on their shoulders. Investigators and psychologists who studied him described a deeply contradictory man. He was devoutly religious, yet completely amoral. He was brilliant, yet driven by profound resentment. Resentment toward his father, toward colleagues he felt had been promoted over him, toward an institution he believed had never properly recognized his intelligence. He didn't betray America for ideology. He didn't believe in communism. He did it, in large part, because he felt overlooked, because he wanted money, and because somewhere deep inside, a man who had been told his entire childhood that he would never amount to anything wanted to prove that he mattered. The cost of bad ego? 3 lives lost. Decades of intelligence work destroyed, the security of an entire nation compromised. Robert Hanssen died in prison on June 5, 2023, at the age of 79. There's a reason this story refuses to go away. It's not just about espionage. It's about something far more unsettling. The idea that the greatest threats don't always come from outside. Sometimes they wear a badge. Sometimes they sit in the cubicle down the hall. Sometimes they coach your kid's sports team and shake your hand at church. Robert Hanssen was, in the end, a man hiding in plain sight. And the system that was supposed to protect this country from exactly that kind of threat failed to see him for over 2 decades. His case led to sweeping reforms inside the FBI, mandatory polygraph testing, stricter computer access protocols, and a fundamental rethinking of how the Bureau monitors its own people. But the damage was already done. 22 years, 6,000 pages, 3 executions, 1 man. The most dangerous spy America ever had was already inside.